We are thrilled to have the opportunity to share this new tool with all of you. This resource is going to be building off of our student success team reflection and action planning tool. So this is really meant to be a companion resource that is aimed at our colleagues who are in district leadership teams and district leadership roles. We know that high quality student success systems are the focus of the GRAD partnership, and this tool was created in order to provide a resource for district leadership teams who are uniquely situated to create the enabling conditions for school teams to be successful in their efforts. District leaders are positioned differently than the leaders in our individual schools, and they're able to influence and impact opportunities in different ways. And while we know this can take many forms, from the creation of systems, programs, and policies to fostering cross-school knowledge sharing, we want to create tools and resources that can be used to help our leadership teams reflect and plan actions to support the enabling conditions that school teams will need. Next slide. So this is a visual of the model of our 4 essential components. Hopefully some of you have seen this before. We have our supportive community relationships, holistic real-time actionable data, the adaptive analysis, response, and improvement system, and a shared set of student-centered mindsets. All of these reside in the enabling conditions that district leaders foster. We want to use this tool with our colleagues to encourage opportunities for productive self-reflection and allow for modeling reflection through the use of this tool. So today we're going to spend some time introducing the resource and have people have time to explore the different conditions that support success. I'm going to now turn it over to Sarah, who's going to talk about how this tool is structured.
Thank you so much. So I believe that link that just got dropped in the chat is taking you to the tool that we're talking about. And you'll notice that we have organized it around some guiding questions. I'm going to open it because I did not tell myself what page those were on. There we go. So you'll see those guiding questions show up on page 5. And they really are how we thought about the district's role. It's sort of the high level, yes, exactly. The high level focus of the district's role. What kind of issues do you need to be thinking about at a district level so that you can set those enabling conditions for the 4 elements of student success systems to flourish? The second thing, go forward, is that you'll notice that we have used this team reflection tool for student success systems as an organizing structure for this tool. And so there's a section for each of the 4 elements: supportive relationships, shared mindsets, and so on. And then within each section, you will see that we have broken down into different indicators or areas of inquiry. And so each row, you'll notice the guiding inquiry, potential data sources, and school-based team look-fors, which come straight from the team reflection tool. And then we've added a column where the district leadership has some specific look-fors or behaviors to think about in terms of their own role for setting those conditions.
So you all have the link to this. This is a free resource. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bob to wrap us up and kind of give us a little bit more context. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Jenny, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Bob Balfance from the Everyone Graduate Center. And I'm just going to provide a little context now for both this specific district tool and also the idea of student success systems more broadly, like how we got here, where we're going, and really the genesis for a lot of this idea that we need to really combine community relationships actionable data, improvement systems, and mindsets came from a series of surveys and focus groups he did with about 300 frontline educators about a year and a half ago. Teachers, counselors, principals, some district folks, some school board folks, and just ask them about their current student support systems, whatever they call them, and just ask, what's working, what's not, what would you like to keep, what would you like to add? And from that, we did get that those that had they appreciated were often some of the core elements of what were once we called before early warning or on track systems, which was the idea of predictive indicators. So you'd be more proactive than reactive. You're sort of trying to monitor kids when they first start missing a few days of school, or they fail a test, or there's some behavior that happen. You're trying to act then as opposed to after they failed a class, after they've been suspended, after they're truant, which we know we have a really bad track record of. We are not good at reactive student supports. So they appreciate something that helps them be proactive and not reactive. They like the idea of some sort of tiered intervention system, however you describe it, that you want to have things you're doing school-wide, you want to have targeted efforts, you want to have, when you need them, more customized approaches. They like the idea of having, a teacher team that brings the insights of teachers along with the data. It's both human insight and the data, which help you figure out what's the best course of action. But they really stress we had to add this upfront focus on building and strengthening relationships at all levels, and how in a way how stretched and snapped they become in some levels during the pandemic. And at some level, this idea of school connectedness, right, which is that there's an adult that knows and cares about me as a person. I have a supportive peer group. I'm engaged in meaningful activities. I feel welcome for who I am. There's always a very important background structure to schools, but we almost didn't notice it until it was gone in the pandemic. And then it really became paramount that we need it, and it doesn't just snap back. It has to actively be rebuilt and even built better than before, because even before there were a lot of kids who were not connected. And then they also stress really the importance of this idea of shared set of student-centered mindsets, saying if they're not all aligned on the why they're doing this, it will not maintain itself, right? You might have a short-term push because it's a new initiative, but if you're not aligned on the why, it doesn't sustain. So we really took that to heart, to adding in both those elements, relationships and student-centered mindsets, and this idea of both holistic data and improvement systems. And the case we make and why we think this, and that became student success system. The case we make for why we need to do this at both the school and the district level, as we go to the next slide, which you don't have to spend a lot of time on, but it is reminding us that there's almost unprecedented levels of student need right now. We have historic rates of chronic absenteeism. We have instructional gaps. In many ways, that absenteeism, if we don't solve it, is going to lock in those instructional gaps. And we have a lot of mental health needs, right? All its sort of levels our schools are not really designed to accommodate, right? Most of our schools are designed at 10, 20, 15% of kids might need some additional, more in-depth supports. And most kids, they have a good teacher, a good general school environment, they're good to go, right? And that's shifted. And that's put a lot of stress and strain on schools and their existing student support systems. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things we really heard from these teachers and principals was how fragmented things have become, sort of all for good reasons over time, but ultimately not to a good result in the end. So over the past 20 years, most schools have added student support systems of different types for sort of the problem of the year, for a better way to say it, right? There was a early warning on track came out around dropout prevention. PBIS came as an alternative to zero tolerance and better ways to have a more positive environment for behavior, not a negative environment. RTI and then MTSS were about academic challenges. When in 2015, when chronic absenteeism became the 5th indicator in state accountability systems in 30-some states, suddenly we have attendance teams to address that. And along the way, we picked up sort of college readiness teams. And what they said to us, that's a lot of meetings, a lot of different facilitators, a lot of time. And each one of those is only addressing a piece of the story where kids are holistic. They're not there's very few that just have one of those buckets and everything else is not connected. So they're saying, we really want something that pulls that all together in a unified way Instead of having many meetings, let's have one meeting that considers all of this, because that's the way both kids are, and that's the way we can be most effective. So that's really was the genesis of this idea of a student success system at the school and district level. And the final thing they said, and the final thing that we believe both the district and the school level tool is really built to do, is to say all schools and districts have some effective student support systems in place. No one is at zero and no one is at negative. So find your strength and build from it, right? The teachers didn't want a new thing. They didn't want like the seventh thing on my list there of the problem of the year that we're designing for. They wanted something that brings it all together, and the obvious way to do is to build from your strength. So if you have a great MTSS system, ask yourself with these tools, what do we need to add to it to become a full student success system? If you have a great early warning on track system, build from that, right? If you have a great attendance team, like build from that, right? It's just like a build from strength. And then really that's the idea that for the same amount of adult effort, we'll get better student outcomes, really is what this is really driven at. And then it gives schools a system that, make sure all students are on this pathway to sort of post-secondary and adult success.